Okay, this is the Orthocast. I'm Albert. I'm here with my co-host Ilya and Bella.
Hello.
It's the first episode, so the Orthocast is going to be a podcast, probably monthly. We'll talk about politics, particularly in Eastern Europe, and all over Orthodox Christendom, and social issues from an Orthodox perspective. Ilya, do you want to start off giving us a bit about you?
Yeah, unlike you guys, I'm cradle Orthodox, so I don't know what it's like to not be Orthodox. So I guess that's something that I can bring to the table for you guys, is that I'm quite fresh to hearing insight from people that weren't. And I am half Serbian, half Greek. So, but I am baptized Serbian Orthodox, and I go to the Serbian Orthodox Church. But I guess when you really look at it, they're both quite the exact same, except for language and 2 weeks in the calendar. As you can tell by my accent, I am born here in Australia, and because I'm Australian, there are no holds barred on my language and slang. Okay, so if anyone that's foreign doesn't understand what I'm saying, tough shit. Okay.
Bella, you want to go?
Okay. So I only recently got baptized in the Greek Orthodox Church, even though I'm Russian and Belarusian, and I discovered Orthodoxy about a year ago, and it's been just a really good year discovering it, and it's now become my whole life. So yeah, I was also born in Australia.
I'm Albert. I was born in Bean Dip Land, America. We're Bean Dip Land and Gatorland meet in East Texas. Grew up there. I'm not even Eastern European at all. I'm half Bean Dip, half regular American. My mom comes from a Spanish family. And I discovered Orthodox by just being a Slavaboo and being totally obsessed with Eastern Europe and Alexander Dugin. So, and he kind of reading his work and and just studying the Eastern European culture and society, it kind of put me onto Orthodoxy. And then I met Bella, and we kind of got into it together.
Yeah.
So disclaimer, you guys are a tag team?
Yeah.
No, I'm just here so I can immigrate.
Oh, yeah.
I'm just with her, so.
For once, the green card's gone the vice versa way.
Yeah. It's not worth having American citizenship anymore, so. Yeah. Can we cut that stutter out in post-production?
Yes, we can.
No, don't. Just don't do it.
All right.
Yeah. That's okay.
Oh,
that's all right. Speaking of post-production, we should also talk about a very special, important person with us, is the producer.
Jesus Christ. Yeah, our producer, do you want us to say your name? No, you probably don't.
No, just call me the producer.
Yeah, Mr. Producer.
Well, we're not calling you JC,
no,
so we can forget that.
We can call him Mr. Producer, like Rush Limbaugh.
Yeah.
Do you guys know him?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah,
I'll go with that.
Whatever. These are the kinds of American references that fall flat here.
That's all right. I'm hoping that other people will get it, and you're not alone. But it's gonna be a big faction split, I reckon.
A schism.
Yeah. The Anglo-Sphere schism.
No, but the thing is,
2018
to the
schism.
east and the west.
Yeah, I was recently at a Greek Orthodox church a few days ago and met all these fine people. And hello. And yeah, it's been a very, very nice experience for the last 3 days, learning more about Orthodoxy, and I do hope to learn more.
And now we're both helping each other, so yeah, it's pretty good.
What were your thoughts first walking into the church, for the first time?
It brought me a lot of peace, which I really didn't expect.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I left the church feeling really happy, and just how friendly everyone was, because I'm not sure the last time an Indian person walked into a Greek Orthodox church.
Yeah.
So I wasn't sure how people would react to me.
Yeah, last time the Greeks interacted with Indians was 300 years before Christ. So
but the Greeks couldn't quite get to India, could they?
We just doxed him as an Indian.
That's all right.
There goes
It's all right.
the
Mr.
WN
Producer.
base is
It was a
gone.
very, very, very nice experience. I'm really happy with that I went.
Yeah, I mean, we're really happy you came along with us,
Yeah.
VJ. You know,
Thank
it's
It
good.
was
Okay,
great.
thanks, Kumar. Yeah.
Alright, you can stop there.
Pajit.
All right, sorry, Pajit.
We can't insult him because he'll just like ruin the mix.
Yeah,
We're
we
not
better be
going
nice
to-
to the producer. That's probably the most you're going to hear from him for a bit.
Yeah.
He might leave a little snarky comment here and there, but
Yeah,
I think
I'll chip in.
the more and more he becomes orthodox, the more and more he'll be present. But for now, know your place, okay?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Know your role and shut your mouth.
We have to make you a caddy.
Yes. That's actually, so the only caddy right here, right now, is Albert. So a caddy is short for Australian. It's Australian slang for catechman.
Is it?
Yeah, we say
Okay.
caddy. Everyone always thinks because we say caddy, they think Roman Catholic.
That's what I was
Yeah.
like, what?
But caddy for us is catechman.
Yeah, caddy.
So, but we call Catholics pappies,
Pappies.
which is not a good word for, because we hear lots of people go, "Oh, hello, papi." But we didn't need to go that far. But no, caddy, pappy, and ortho bros, and sis. So there you go.
Yeah.
All right. So that's formalities out of the way.
All right, so since today is going to be a political type episode, I think we should sum up our political views a bit.
Yep.
So
You can go first.
you want me to go first?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I think the first thing is that we all have to admit that our political views are extremely eclectic.
They changed.
Yeah, and so I would say that I'd identify with the Nazbol movement.
Yep.
Unironically. I don't know. Maybe I
What
could
was
be
the
a
journey to
Nazbol.
that though? It must have been a lot of swinging.
Nazbol, yeah. So how do you get to being Nazbol?
It was because I feel like I'm in the same position as you. Like we're both Nazbol. I
Both
guess.
go ahead.
Yeah.
Go. Be my guest.
I think because you started telling me about Alexander Dugin
Yeah.
and the fourth political theory, and like straight away when I started like researching into that, I was like, this is actually perfect. Like
It is really perfect. I guess I would say I'm a fourth positionist, Duginist, whatever you want to call it. But I was like Strauss-right, more or less, like kind of Strauss-rist with no church involvement, besides like Hinduism, which is a long story, and I guess we could talk about that in the bio, but
We've got someone who's experienced with that here.
yeah,
So.
yeah. So I used to be into Hinduism, Hare Krishna, and I was I was also a Strauss-rist. And one day I was watching Culture Thug, which is a shout out, and I saw like the fourth positionist video he made.
Yeah.
Like fourth political
Yeah.
theory. Great video. And I was just interested in it, kind of fascinated by it because it was like it strayed away from what I guess I call ideological necrophilia, which is when like people are trying to resurrect political ideologies that are like nearly 100 years old. I think like we're getting up to when the centenarian of when Giovanni Gentile wrote with Mussolini The Doctrine of Fascism. That must have been in like 1919, 1920, around then. So, I mean, these ideologies are written about an entirely different world. One that was like an industrial economy. Today we have a post-industrial economy in most Western countries. And I think the post-industrial economy suits like essentially planned economy better than it would, a lot of these like fascist economies. Also, I don't want to take up too much time. Basically, I don't think fascism, communism, these kinds of ideologies are applicable to the modern world today. So, fourth position seems like the way to go because I'm not going to be, a Western liberal capitalist.
Yeah, I guess I'm on the same. I guess Albert influenced me in
Well, it's because you guys are together, I guess.
yeah,
helps
but then
strengthen that.
even without even not considering our relationship, like just like the principles of it and it's just so like it's kind of what I was looking for a while because I was into other like ideologies at the time, and I kind of just was like, this isn't right, like in my opinion. So yeah, 4th position gang.
Yeah, it's just it doesn't try to rehash things. I think we could do an episode on this, an entire episode just on the origins of communism and fascism in relation to liberalism, because they're totally derived from what you could call maybe reactions to liberalism, but they define themselves in relation to the ideology of liberalism, where I think if you read the fourth political theory, if you read a lot of the people who are influenced by Dugan or who he was influenced by, like I'm a big fan of Oswald Spengler. You can't see, but Bella has her copy of the fourth political theory out on the table. If you read these people who he was inspired by and who he inspired, you'll see sort of this strain of a total opposition to liberalism, but it's not a reaction. It's an ideology that existed before it, and that is just they come from two totally different schools of thought about the world and about how the world works, about how history works. A lot of liberals that you meet are going to give you this like we could call like maybe a progressivist view of history, or I guess a Hegelian view in a way.
Could you like sum up like the fourth political theory, just like
for people? Yeah. So, well, I really am becoming the host. We didn't even let Ilya say his.
No, I've got my spiel coming up. Don't worry.
We'll get right into it. It's okay.
We got time.
What does it reject? What does it accept?
Yeah. So you want to reject all forms of like Western liberal doctrines. So, and what does that mean? And a lot of people who hear me say that are gonna, they say like, oh, you're anti-white, you're anti-West. Like, we have to save the West. You can't save the West because principally all of these things that we see that are wrong with the West come from the West. They aren't, even if you subscribe to like a Zog theory or like this comes from Jews, all they did was take things that were already present in the society and just expand on them, if that.
They just added fuel to the fire.
Yeah. I mean, this kind of Enlightenment thinking, it's sorry. Am I clicking? I'm clipping. Bring it back.
Close to the mic.
Closer to the mic. Okay. Sorry. I got to get those hand signals down. When you're thinking about these kinds of things.
I wish we had a camera.
Just choke on the microphone, bro.
I really wish we had a camera.
Yeah, it's all right.
Let's do a vodcast.
We'll do a VOD soon.
We'll see how it goes.
Yeah.
We'll see if my parents
If we get followers, we can
this.
do a podcast. But we're gonna get the Patreon
Oh yeah.
for the podcast.
Oh, yeah.
You're paying $5 a month.
Anyway.
So all these things are innate to liberalism, or they're innate to Western culture. Liberalism is innate to Western culture because basically it's like people who look at the West that are like these Western, I don't know if you want to call them Western chauvinists. A lot of them call themselves Western chauvinists, so they try to create a link between Rome and the West today. So like these civilizations of antiquity, like we could say the Greek civilization, Roman civilization, and they try to draw a connection between the two. And in many ways there is, because these civilizations occupied largely the same territory. But they are formed out of totally different situations. So the Greeks and the Romans, because I consider that from ancient Greeks, basically from the end of the Minoan civilization all the way to the end of the Roman Empire in the West, we could call that one long civilization, because it would have been about 2,000 years, I think. Which, if you read Oswald Spengler's Decline of the West, he talks about how civilizations have these 2,000-year lifespans, more or less. So, when you look at that civilization was founded on a totally different basis than the one that we're living in now, the Western civilization. They were more honestly focused on beauty than anything. They were kind of obsessed with human beauty and the human form. That's why you always see these naked sculptures. Romans were particularly fascinated by the male penis. They used to wear, like we wear crosses, they'd wear like these little penises on their neck.
What about the feminine penis?
Yeah.
Hey, what about that, huh?
Jeez, we live in a society. It's the current year.
Yeah, I mean, so it's that kind of thing. And Oswald Spengler, he talks about the West being fixated on like science and mathematics, or really just knowledge in general. So you can look at it this way. We're fixated on like dates in the West. You can see that in the way like we calculate our time. There's a big fixation on like time that's passed, whereas in like the Greco-Roman civilization, they didn't have that kind of a thing. They weren't obsessed with dates and mathematics. You could quite easily sort of draw a line between people, even if they had lived 300 years before, to the present day in those kinds of civilizations. And I don't want to take up too much time talking about this. We could do definitely an episode on that, but I think fundamentally what I'm trying to say is that the West is not Rome. It's not Greece. It doesn't have ties to these civilizations. And really, if there is one that does, it's the Eastern European, Eurasian civilization. So I'm an accelerationist for the West, is the end.
Speaking of accelerationists, I guess this is where I come in. I think out of everyone, I'm probably the biggest vroom vroom enthusiast.
Oh, it's up there.
Yeah.
I think we all are in general now.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things in Orthodoxy that we learnt, especially because we're quite close, in the secular world, is that I think we all accept that we are dead to this world.
Yeah, death to the world.
Yeah, straight up. And I guess that's a great way to sum up my political ideologies right now in 4 words, like just death to the world. But I guess
can you explain what that is, in case?
it's just rejecting the world we live in and focusing on a greater, I wouldn't say idea, because it's the reality, it's the truth, of just knowing that
we're dead to the world but alive in Christ.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Boom. So
shout out St. Isaac the Syrian.
Yeah. So yeah, I try my best to reject as much as I can. I try not to watch the news as much. I try not to get too invested into the whole, when I see on social media when people going crazy with the Nike campaigns or something like that with that Copernic
so
guy.
pointless.
Like, I'm just like, it doesn't interest me, doesn't affect me. There are some things that do affect me, like the social well-being of society, but I feel like now I just have learnt to just slow down a bit. I guess with my past, I'm sure we haven't even talked about our past yet, but I guess I can say, because this really does some of my political beliefs. Yeah, I was pretty far right.
Yeah.
Not in the sense where I was ANCAP, where I want to sell my child for a shot of heroin, but more like the other way. Out of the 4 squares, my color was very blue.
Yeah, I think all of us were.
But slowly, now that I've been reading more, I guess not the opposition. I wouldn't say that. Looking at the other squares, colors, and stuff like that, with more insight. I'm not right or left anymore. I just say to people, I'm up.
Yeah.
Only because if you think equality is of true God and not God Himself, then equality tends to make you go more down. And believing in Christ makes you go up because you believe in authority. And I'm very authoritarian, radical centrist authoritarian, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
But I do have a fixation on the Iron Guard, like Codrian is my dude. Only because I guess reading what he tried to do was inspirational for me. But as you said before, that's a different era. You can't look at that and go, let's bring back the Iron Guard 2.0.
Yeah.
We'll call it the Gold Guard because it's shinier.
Yeah.
But like the thing that I've learned is that died, in my opinion, in the 20th century.
Yeah.
And I'm not talking World War II, World War I. I'm talking like bang on, like even before that stuff was happening. Like there was tension in the West, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
And I've started to realize that that's ancient history. You can learn from it. There are some cool things that they've said. Especially for my legionaries, like that one was just like, whoa,
Yeah.
But now it's like, I like Dugan because he's not looking back.
He's not. He's looking
looking
the future.
forward. He's looking like, you know what? I've said it before to you guys. I think he's the Nostradamus of politics.
And he is actually in many ways. Like, his book, I've read a lot of his work, but he wrote a book in the 90s. Foundations of Geopolitics. I'm almost certain that's the name of it, but I don't know for sure. But it is, when you read this book, it came out, I think, in 99. It is, like, incredibly able to predict geopolitical situations that exist now that, I mean, it's just sort of like, well, how did he even know this? And, you know, he also gives solutions that you can see when you look at the way that the Russian state operates. You can tell that, and actually, they make their officers read this book, so that should give you an idea of how important it is. But you can see that the Russian state is operating in line with the things that he says. People consider Dugin to be like the chief ideologue for the Russian ruling party, United Russia. So he's quite brilliant in my opinion, and I
Orthodox now as well.
Yeah, that's literally what he wants to create.
Is
like, you guys are trying to get me on board with that, and I have to say I'm in.
Yeah, I'm in.
Yeah, but like you know,
book's right there.
Yeah. I've watched the Cultured Thug video now.
Yeah.
I mean, he's actually the guy that really showed me Codriani, to be honest.
Yeah, me too. Yeah.
So yeah, shout out to him. He's, you know, I wish that his videos were a bit more visually accepting for the normie. Because, you know, telling like someone that's a friend that's like a neocon or something like that, like, hey, watch this guy do a PowerPoint slide for 1.5 hours about some obscure fascism, like, you know, that existed, you know, pre-World War II. Like, they're just gonna go, oh, what? I don't even know what half these words mean.
Yeah.
But like, you know, I wish we had more guys like him that were like, you know, that sort of Paul Joseph Watson kind of personality.
Yeah, and I think we need more of that in this political sphere.
I guess that's why we're stepping up too, because we're trying to, you know, help raise awareness. Yeah,
and I think the issue is like you have to find a balance between intellectualism in terms of politics and populism when you're talking about these kinds of things, because like I could sit here and I could just go full academia and speak, you know, and I mean, I could just be quite boring. I could lecture people, which I probably am right now.
It's great content, man.
Do it.
I think you have to be relatable to people. You have to also be able to talk about topics in a way that just the average person can understand. Like the average person doesn't. The average person doesn't want to sit here and read, like, you know, a diatribe or an academic paper on. Like,
not even university students want to do that. What makes you think someone?
Yeah, no one. You know,
they just want the quickest way to understand something, like in the easiest way as well.
Yeah.
Sometimes, you know, that's why I love this whole meme movement, because sometimes top text, bottom text just nails it. You know
it does.
Like,
no, it really does. I'm not kidding.
Yeah, no.
I became a communist because of memes. I didn't read a word of theory.
I know a lot of people that became Orthodox because of memes. So you know what? It does work.
I didn't read any theory, any Marxist theory. I was just like, oh yeah. Yeah,
sees the means of my dick. Yeah, like, you know what I mean? Like,
I'm
it's just like, yeah, boom.
So, what's on the what are the show notes so far? We're going to talk a little bit about current affairs. This episode is going to be, I think, more focused on current affairs than, you know, some in the future might be, because we're trying to create a little bit of a movement here for like youth who want to get more involved in Orthodoxy. They want to learn about Orthodoxy, but most importantly, they want to also know about the politics. And I know that Orthodoxy is not necessarily a political church, but I think that when you have certain beliefs and certain convictions about life, you're going to arrive at political positions.
I guess that's what makes it political too, because it's so distant away from it. It's sort of just, it's its own persona.
No, exactly. And it's a natural thing. Like we do as a church believe in a tsardom. I mean, some you know, if you're Greek Orthodox, you believe in like a basilius or something like that, but
Slav gang.
I think in general we believe in hierarchy, which is that's a right-wing position. Or we don't even have to call it a right-wing position. We can call it what would in the past, in the original terms of right and left, be considered a right-wing position. I find it kind of funny that a lot of these like libs will be like, oh, I'm right wing. ANCAP is right wing. They have no concept of where even the term right wing comes from. Like, right wing comes from after the French Revolution. You had supporters of the king sitting on the right wing, so it was naturally about statism.
Would you say that because of, I think it's called the Overton window,
Yeah.
that over the course of times, that whole right and left stuff has just got muddled up?
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, the Overton window has now been pushed totally to what we would consider the bottom half of the political compass. Like, and I'm writing a book right now, I'll be honest, but I'm not even sure we could say that. It's just that they are in a totally separate civilizational mindset than I think that Orthodox Christians and the nations that are historically Orthodox are in, because their entire civilization is liberal. Like, if you go to the United States, where I'm from, we live really in a one-party state country.
Mm.
And we live in an ideologically defined nation, no different than like the Soviet Union in that sense, that the ideology is everywhere, it's all pervasive, you cannot get away from it if you go outside of your house. So it's not necessarily that it's not authoritarian, but it's an authority for a completely different ideology not even just ideology, but an entirely different civilizational mindset than we have.
I'd just like to say something really quick. Like, you said that the bottom half of the compass is like, the focal point.
Yeah.
I find that because Orthodoxy is so far away from that it's also a blessing that people want to come to our church because they're searching for that alternative.
Oh, yeah.
Definitely.
Well, people are.
Yeah.
Yeah, when I first came to Orthodox Church, like, legit, all the people my age that was there were all just, like, right-wingers, and I'm like, what? Like...
Yeah, what's going on?
Yeah.
Like, and for me, like, I because I'm cradle Orthodox, and I always took it for granted, because I went to a school that was not Christian, and I still am around lots of, non-Christian friends, and I've got nothing against them, like, God gave you free will. But the thing is that because I was so influenced by that all, and I've always had orthodoxy, I actually put it low on the priority list than I should have. And because I cared more about faith later on, and friends and family first as a young kid, it was a big reality check when I started to realize that, wow, I've had this from the start, and there are people like you guys who've just begged for it your whole, like, you've been begging for it, and I've had it this whole time. I feel I should apologize, like, I should have had a better I should have been led by I should have led by a better example.
It's called Orthodox guilt, mate.
Catholic guilt, but it's
yeah. Sorry, guys.
No,
I'm not trying to be a cuck here, but yeah, it's just I feel like I should have been waving that two-headed eagle flag a lot better as a kid.
But you're doing it now. So.
I'm doing it now, but I'm hoping that my kids don't make the same mistakes. Or my parents didn't make any mistakes. It was my choice.
Yeah.
But this is how it is. This is life. We all come from different paths, and we all end up on the same road at the end of it.
Exactly.
We all die. So yeah.
Well, I mean, I came from an largely atheist household. My parents didn't raise me with really any faith. So I can say that it is quite, like, you just end up with, like, this very bleak worldview. And I know that in general, I think Orthodox Christians have kind of a bleak worldview, but it's sort of different because when the world sucks and you're just like, oh yeah, the world is shit, and there's just nothing else, then it feels very isolating and very, like, depressing.
Yeah, because, like, you can have a bleak worldview from a bleak, like, outlook on life. It's just a difference if you're an Orthodox or if you're, let's say, an atheist.
Yeah.
Like, when you're an atheist, you resort to things like, well, not an atheist, but like a non-believer or whatever, you can resort to things like suicide or drugs or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But then, like, when you're Orthodox, like, you have the church. Yeah.
And I would say that, honestly, I feel that a ton, because I don't think I've ever had a community like I do in the Orthodox Church. Because I mentioned, I think, briefly earlier, I was involved in Hinduism. I've been involved in Protestantism, Scientology, all these different faiths, basically. because I was just searching for one, and I definitely knew that there was a religion out there, and I believed in a God by my like mid-teens or so, I think around then, but I couldn't really figure out what, or where it was or what to believe in, and you can end up really getting into some dark places when you don't have that kind of guidance or.
I feel like the West has caused this though, in a lot
absolutely.
of like, I know that every generation has their struggle, but most of the struggles in the past, in my opinion, have never ever faced the ordeal that we have in the modern day, which is, in my opinion, the mental health epidemic, where these kids aren't given the same tools that we've, crafted for the past 2,000 years in a society. Socioculturally, I should say, where, we've got kids now just accepting nihilism, and just thinking, what, there's no hope. It doesn't matter. I'm just a speck of dust in the, whatever, And
I was one of them.
Yeah.
I still
Yeah.
partially am. That's why I'm looking towards orthodoxy to find some sort of guidance,
And I find that now that we are starting to wave that flag more, we're trying to get that culture back of, there is still hope, there is still love, there is still positivity, but you have to understand is that, humans aren't perfect and this world isn't perfect.
Of course.
And because of that, I feel like, I'm not even bashing like those nihilist and cynicist, philosophers or whatever. I think their stuff is, some interesting stuff. I wouldn't agree with it all the time, but I can understand why people turn to that instead of theology.
Oh yeah.
But it's good to see some people now choosing that.
Yeah.
And I would say honestly that nihilist principles are understandable in the Western world to definitely, like, I agree with you in that it makes sense that they join it. And I honestly think that there are some nihilist philosophers. I mean, the father of nihilism, arguably Friedrich Nietzsche. I think he actually coined the term, but I don't remember. When he talks about God being dead,
it's very misinterpreted in my opinion.
It's quite misinterpreted, but it's true about the West.
Yeah.
I think obviously God, as in like actually God, not the concept of God, but the being is not dead in the West. But without the concept in people's minds, then he effectively is. Because these people are walking around with no God in their life. Some people that are even Christians in the West are walking around every day with no, kind of faith interactions. They probably don't go to church ever. They just are these sort of like Gnostic Christians that, if you ask them, do you believe in God? They'll say yes, and maybe they went to church as children. But they're living lives that are totally just controlled by these like pretty much satanic impulses and
it's because it's easy.
Yeah.
It's the easy path.
Easy route.
It's if you had a choice between going into the thorny forest or on the Rainbow Road, I think everyone would pick
the Rainbow Road.
Not that it's a fun level of Mario Kart, but
Yeah.
Yes, it is.
I'm not good at Mario Kart, maybe that's why.
Oh.
But the interesting thing about nihilism is that I feel like if Nietzsche said if the West is dead instead of God is dead, I think we'd have a lot more positive, productive people in society. Yeah. But because he just chose that word, we have people now saying, even if God did exist, he's abandoned us. Like, he doesn't care about us anymore.
I hate that term.
And it's like, well, that's one thing. If God does exist, then he's everywhere. Mm-hmm. But that's a whole different topic we can talk about. I think we've got to love that about episode 1 is that we're basically paving out what the rest of everything's going to be about. And I hope that, if you're listening to this podcast right now, okay, so I'm breaking the fourth wall, I'm sorry. But, this is the kind of stuff that you're going to be facing with in the future. So if you're riding a bicycle or driving a car, make sure you set your EQ perfectly, and you're going to be in a rough ride with us,
High Colt Cabana.
Yeah.
I mean,
we'll get back into things yet, go.
I think I had a great comment, but I lost it. But we can kind of look at things as like you have this road to effectively hell that can seem quite fun, for a period of time when you're going down it, but you will end up empty at some point. You're going to end up feeling empty.
But the funny thing is that Orthodox Christians also face that. The thing is, though, is that we accept that happens.
Yeah, but we don't feel empty because we're filled with God, I think, at the end of the day. And that's sort of the difference. Like, when you're trying to fill yourself with, like, drugs and, just, like, sex and drinking all the time, which I'm not going to say you can't drink or anything, but I think, like, this sort of consuming, well, this is capitalist economy. You just consume to feel better. And, when you're living in this godless society, which capitalism wants you to live in, you're just going to consume so that you feel better. But eventually, you're going to come to a point where if you're not a Christian, you can't really find out why you hate your life. And that's why I think a lot of people kill themselves, because they cannot see a way out of it. They just see, like, my life sucks, and I've done the things that the world tells me I should do to feel better.
And they're not satisfied by what they can
But the
see.
funny thing is that because we say things like we're dead to the world and, it doesn't matter, like, and stuff like that, some people who have those sort of thoughts embrace orthodoxy for that, because they don't actually have to commit suicide, but then reject the things that are making their life shit.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Exactly.
Yeah. That's, I've really taken that to heart. The death of the world principle, and I think, like, once you do, because I was definitely quite depressed, like, in high school. I think most kids are. Once I accepted this sort of, like, death of the world mentality, it was like, I don't have to really be affected by it, because I'm just living outside of it totally. Now, this doesn't mean be a hermit. I just want to, point that out. We're not saying you should just stop living your life, quit your job, and become a hermit, although that'd be pretty based if you did.
We know someone who's trying to, right?
Yeah,
now.
we actually do know a guy who has done that, and he's quite happy. He seems extremely happy with his life. But you shouldn't allow this to get into your mind. You should never just be, like, accepting of... I also want to note that we totally did not talk about current events.
That's fine.
Yeah. But, once you stop accepting these kinds of things into your mind, you stop accepting these impulses that are all coming from a culture that is inherently godless, and in that way it's satanic, if not overtly satanic at this point. You're not going to feel these traumatic thoughts in your mind telling you you're not worth it, or feeling empty about your life. Like, when we go to Bible study.
Yep.
All of us. We're not going to say when or where, but
doxed.
But I think we all feel just so much better after it.
Yeah.
When we're together.
I do. I love the food. You guys make some great stuff.
Oh, yeah.
But
We made great stuff.
Yeah.
Like, when you leave that, or when you leave confession, or you leave a divine liturgy, you just feel relaxed.
And refreshed.
And
cleansed.
Exactly.
Yeah. And that's something that you don't get out, You might get that, you take a holiday. I went on a holiday to Thailand. I feel so great.
Even like I took a shower in a bubble bath spree or something like that at some beautician place, whatever. I brushed my teeth. Like, I feel so great. It's a different feeling because it's spiritual.
And it's to do with your soul rather than physical.
That's exactly how I felt the other day when we went to the church.
Yeah.
I came out feeling just so much. I actually did feel kind of cleansed.
Yeah.
That's good.
I went in with
and you know what? But you know what, buddy? I'm just gonna say right now, that's 1%. You've just had when when you had Subway for the first time and you get that cookie.
Oh, far out.
Like the first time, you're never ever gonna get that feeling ever again. Like you have the Subway cookie for the first, and it's crunchy on the outside, and then all of a sudden you get that nice gooey doughy texture.
Yes, brother.
And then you're like, all of a sudden, I want more. Yeah. Well.
And then you get diabetes.
Yeah,
Just you wait till your first divine liturgy. Like, I remember my first. I walked out. I was like, I've never felt this like peaceful.
Yeah. But the thing is that we've got to remember is that I want you to experience it in English first. Yeah. Only because I want you to understand it. I know that most of the churches here, unfortunately, are very ethnocentric in the sense that if it's a Serbian Orthodox church, it's in Slavonic. If it's Greek, it's in Greek. But like. There are days where things are in English, like a Saturday, or a Wednesday night or something like that. But there's actually also really good news is that there is in the monastery here in this city, there's going to be an English-speaking chapel dedicated for English liturgies and such. So
That's so cool.
our buddy who's now choosing the hermit life wants to help that out. So I think that's really commendable to see the young generations like us knowing that these boomers are dying and that we need to replace them and bring back the Zoomer gang.
Yeah,
you know?
create a society that functions and isn't like on the point of fracturing regularly. I think that's something that you're only going to see with a resurgence of Christianity. I think it's funny when you look at how the West is fractured.
Yeah.
You know, it's all due to, the death of religion and Christianity in the West. I also find it kind of interesting that, when was Nietzsche writing? Like 1890s, around then? Right at the turn of the century, turn of the 20th century. That is almost to, exactly when Oswald Spengler was saying that, that would be the middle point of Western culture. And one of the terms he uses, and they're kind of loaded terms, but is culture and civilization. Culture is when a civilization is being created, it's expanding, it's creating art. This for the West would be from, he likes to date it, I think, from like 1000 to, the 1900s, thereabout. That would be when it was a culture. And then from there on, where we're living now, is the civilizational period, where it's now beginning to critique itself. And it's obvious that the West is critiquing itself. And the first thing that is gone is the foundation of the West, which is its religion. All civilizations are based on their religion. I think the oldest, I know the oldest structure we've ever found is a religious site. So once you remove that,
in like the Middle East sort of.
yeah,
area.
Turkey,
Yep.
yeah, southern Turkey. Bella, can you find what the name of that is?
Sure.
Cool.
It's like something Tepe, something like that.
Just to continue on to that, like now we see now in this modern era, and this is another topic we'll be talking about in the future, hint hint, that Christianity and religion is the new counterculture.
It is, absolutely.
Traditionalism, family life, all that is now seen so distant because everyone would rather ride the hedonist carousel and have replaced children with pets. And
oh God! Dog, mom, dog.
Yeah, all that, and and I'm not trying to bash them. Like, thank you for leaving the gene pool. You're doing actually a big help. But the thing is, though, is that because Christianity is in a counterculture, I won't be surprised in a few generations' time when it all just swings back our way again. Like
Yeah.
So
Well, it already has in the East. In the Göbekli Tepe. That's what it's
Okay,
called.
cool.
Göbekli Tepe. If you look that up, that's the oldest site, the oldest construction in human history.
We'll try and leave a link. Okay.
Yeah,
Cool.
if we can put that in the show notes. And it's a church. Granted, a lot of these secularists aren't going to tell you that because they don't want you to know that religion is paramount to the existence of a people, but it is.
Well, the first thing, it's human nature to always be curious and ask questions, and when it comes to existence,
I don't think there's any other reasonable answer.
we don't get free will for that when we
No.
come to this earth. We are here and we're like, what happened before? And yeah.
No, we can do up. Me and Bella can do some conspiracy episodes about
Oh, yes.
the origins of
please.
man.
I'd love
Wait.
to.
Yeah, well, you
That'd
can
be
do
great.
them.
I can go off. I'll be talking more.
Yeah, you'll be going off on the.
Yeah, I think that's really good that we're partnered up like this. Like, we all have our different areas of expertise, and
Yeah.
I'm sure that, there are going to be some where I'm just going to be in the back corner going, twiddling my thumbs. Yeah, okay, cool. Especially when you bring out the big guns.
The big guns.
Yeah, okay, cool.
Like the show script that we have.
Yeah.
So
Let's
far.
go.
All right.
Let's
I'm not
transition to
followed.
that.
Let's transition to news.
Do the first one.
The first
Music.
one, so you can talk. You don't want to leave the
So
first
I
one for
think
last.
now that this first half, or this first segment is pretty much just an introduction of what we're doing and what we're going to do. We're now going to get to the nitty gritty, which is what Albert and Bella are definitely going to have a say, because when it comes to Eastern European Eurasian affairs, these guys have got it all covered.
Dude,
So I'm going to take a step back now and let you guys sort it out. All right?
You
Okay.
should dip your feet in sometimes, though.
I don't mind getting my toes a little bit out.
well, so I wanted to talk about, this sort of third Rome idea. This is common in Eurasianism. I've talked about it a bit, but there's been some issues between the Moscow Patriarchate and Constantinople, the Ecumenical Patriarch, or Patriarch, however you Aussies want to say it. More or less, Moscow has threatened to break relations with Constantinople. I think they have in certain organizations.
For what reason?
Well, there's a belief that the Ecumenical Patriarch is going to recognize the Ukrainian Orthodox Church, which is a violation of canon law, church law. A patriarch is not supposed to get involved in the affairs of another patriarchate. And I mean, personally, I think if he were to recognize Ukraine, that is something that is entirely a political move. He has no reason to do that. I don't want to add fuel to the fire on this, but I think in some ways Moscow's right. I don't think the Ecumenical Patriarch is. I mean, I kind of want to watch what I say here, but I think in some ways he's acting kind of dangerously.
Yeah.
I think one of the things about the Orthodox Church that's so great about it is we have very few schisms. We really have no schisms. We have the old believers, but really the old believers are not a schism from the Orthodox Church. They believe in all the things that occur in the Orthodox Church. They just don't want to do the Greek rite. They wanted to continue with the old.
The cross that they do is just the opposite.
Yeah.
It's still the 2 and the 3.
Yeah.
So,
I
actually think it looks cooler, but that's my opinion. It looks like they're teleporting like in Dragon Ball Z or something but that's alright.
Yeah.
I don't, I don't see that as a schism. So this kind of a move is very dangerous to me, and I think, and this isn't even my idea. This was put into my head by a clergyman. But is Constantinople really able to be, the capital of the Orthodox Church anymore?
The kebab shop down the road disagrees.
I mean, I don't think it can be. Right now, it's in an occupied territory. We can't even have a church that's bigger than a mosque, I don't think. And so he has to live in these very humble, and I mean, it's not necessarily bad that he's living humbly, but we should be occupying the churches that the Byzantine Empire created down there. And if you can't do that, I think that the seat of the Ecumenical Patriarch should be moved to a country where he can do that. And fundamentally, the most powerful Orthodox country in the world is Russia.
Yeah.
Are you sure about that? There's a place that's called Serbia.
Serbia, Greece.
Yeah. Nah, keep going. It's definitely Russia.
It has to be Russia. I mean, and it could be moved to Serbia. It could be moved to any other country, really, where it's not controlled by the Turks. The Turkish government right now, even if you like Erdogan, which you really shouldn't, but if you do, he is controlling the Orthodox Church in Turkey. I mean, he has the ability to choose who's going to be the successor to the Ecumenical Patriarch. A lot of people don't even know that. There's no reason for it to be still there besides tradition. And I know a lot of people don't want to give up that tradition, but I don't think we necessarily have a choice, because that government in Ankara is going to continually persecute us there. And if we want to have a head of the church, who is actually in a country that will respect our beliefs, our traditions, allow us to pick our own leader without having to, have a list that's censored by, the Turkish government, then we need to move it to Russia. And I think that really that should have been done when the Byzantine Empire was conquered by the Turks. I don't think it's very controversial to say that Russia has basically been the center of, or not the center of, but the successor to the kind of Caesaropapism that existed in the Roman Empire, then transferred to the Byzantine Empire, and then became the Tsardom.
Yeah, but there was a big. Sorry to interject again.
Yeah.
But there was a big struggle in the 20th century where Orthodoxy was just on the bones.
Oh, absolutely.
You know, and once again, now the post 1991, I think, when
the Soviet Union collapsed in '91, but a lot of the other Orthodox countries were free by '89.
There was slow resurgences. Once again, Russia's leading the way again, even after the post breakup of communism, and I feel like that's another hint that needs to be taken as well. Like, you know, these guys are, even though Orthodoxy had its time where it was really, you know, full of strife.
Yeah, churches were being blown up in Soviet Russia.
So now Russia's leading again, going, hey, we got to patch up the mistakes that we've done.
Yeah.
And now what happened to Orthodoxy in the 20th century is now happening in Western Christianity during the 21st century. I feel like, once again referring this back to Orthodoxy, lots of other Christians want to come to our church.
Oh,
you know?
yeah. Well, I mean, we've had
and
Christians come.
when they talk about coming back, it's not because of Greece or Constantinople. It's because what Russia's doing.
Yeah,
you know, they're like, we hate Pope Francis. Like, they're saying it, like, you know.
Oh yeah.
And they're like, we hate what he's doing, and I thank him for it. Like, you're making more Orthodox Christians. Like, God bless. But when they say, oh, we just love what you guys are doing in the Orthodox Church, every single thing they're listing is majority what Russia's doing.
Yeah.
So Russia is the poster child at the moment.
Yeah. Well, and I just think that really what needs to happen is we just need to formalize it. We need to formalize it. You know, Russia is the seat of Christendom. It's I think it's really one of the last implicitly Christian countries.
Thanks, Putin.
So it's really just a formality, but I think it needs to happen. Because the way that things currently are structured, where we have the ecumenical patriarch, the head effectively of the church, living in an occupied territory, is just something that it can't really go on any longer. Especially now where we're at a point where Christianity is at an existential point. You know, we're going into another time of persecution in the West, where if you're a Christian, you're going to be seen like Nazis are today, I think.
I can't wait. I honestly can't wait for that, because it's prophesized in the Bible that's going to happen. And it just honestly, once you accept that this is all part of the plan, you know, you feel so much more free.
Absolutely.
And just to go back onto again, with what you were saying before about, you know, the Constantinople loyalists and the fact they're being really sentimental.
Yeah.
This also goes with our political beliefs. We don't want to dwell in the past anymore. We want to look forward.
Yeah.
You know, when it comes to fourth political theory, you know, you're taking the best of the past, but it's to create a better future. And I just feel like holding on to something that was clearly a God-given task, which is to remind us that this can happen to us.
Yeah.
And that's for Serbs as well. When we lost Kosovo, that was God punishing us for the terrible things we did when we called ourselves Yugoslavia.
Yeah.
And I feel like once you have that insight that everything is God's will,
Exactly.
and He does that to test us, we need to stop thinking that this punishment is something that we just lag on with us. We need to just let it go and
Absolutely.
and repent on it.
Absolutely.
You know, and be cleansed of it. Just like we do with
our own sins. Yeah.
We need to do it collectively as I guess you could say, a community, a nation, a tribe. I don't know, like whatever.
No, I mean, as a church, we need to move forward, and look to. I mean, look to the future. What's coming in the future is actually something good for us. Like, you know, when we're talking
prophecy about like the 1/3.
I think that's Saint Paisios.
Yeah, Saint Paisios.
So,
I don't know it quote by quote, but he basically said that we'll Constantinople will be returned to us
Mm-hmm.
in an undesirable manner. Like, it will just be given to us because no one else will want it.
Yeah.
And people interpret it as it's going to be nuked,
Mm-hmm.
you know. And I really hope that's a good lesson that we can all learn. It's like, you want Constantinople back? Here, it's a pile of rubble.
Yeah.
And it's like Chernobyl.
The Turks will survive though.
Oh, yeah, because there's a roach joke. Yeah, very good.
One thing.
Roach joke. Very well done. I like that, producer.
I just kind of settled in a bit.
Yeah. That was funny.
No, I think 1/3 of them will convert, according to.
Well, let's be honest. Turks are just Muslimized Greeks. Yeah. Let's bring back Anatolia. Nah, but yeah, you're right about the prophecy. I don't know word by word. I'm sure that if we
Albert, do you know it?
Well, there is. I know he says. I think he said 1/3 will.
1/3 will die.
Well, yeah, 1/3 will die. 1/3 will convert, but I don't know what happens to the other third. I've never been able to remember what happens to the other
Flee?
third.
No, I don't know.
Can you look that up?
Can we make it 2/3 die? No, I'm just kidding. Nah. That's the Serb in me. No.
I know
2/3 convert. That's the
Dude,
Greek in me.
Is that?
All right.
Is that? I mean, I know. I think the Jews say something similar. That like.
Well, the thing with the Jews is that they were on the same path as us when it comes to prophecies and all that. You know, I wouldn't say predestiny because that's quite Presbyterian, but like, you know, the fact that they have had these same analogies given to us by God.
Yeah.
It's just the difference is that they think it's them and we think it's us.
Not only that, but they also rejected a lot of them
Oh yeah,
outright.
they
And
rejected that the Messiah came 2018 years ago.
Then, yeah.
That's the biggest one,
Well,
and I'm
they've
sure that's another topic we can talk
We
about.
could definitely talk about that. But they rejected it. Not only that, but they also critiqued it, slandered it, blasphemed it in every way possible in the most horrid of ways. You know, the way that they talk about Jesus in the Talmud.
Yeah.
This is just absolutely
Boiling and
atrocious.
extreatment.
Yeah.
Or is that Mother Mary? I can't remember.
I think both of them are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, it's a tragedy to see that Christianity has been pacified so much to think that is the state of Israel, the current one right now, is the same as the Bible.
Oh, yeah,
and,
not at all.
And they're all this. And I know that it can come across as controversial to other Christians, but I just feel like that's another thing of Orthodoxy is that it's misinterpreted differently by all the denominations, you know. And I think one of the cool things that we have is that because we're unchanged and because lots of the things were written in Greek, it's quite easy to just translate it as it is.
Yeah.
Have we got the quote up now?
Yeah, so
Yeah, cool.
So basically, Elder Paisios says that Constantinople will be given to us. There will be a war between Russia and Turkey. In the beginning, the Turks will believe they are winning, but this will lead to their destruction. The Russians eventually will win and take over Constantinople. So maybe this conflict between the two might lead down that path.
So could we start saying Tsargrad? Like, you know, Constantinople's the old name. Like, you know, if the Russians are going to take it over, like, let's go.
Putingrad.
Oh my goodness, imagine that. Now I know that Putin's a great guy and all, but I think that you know, if he's gonna do it, he better become Tsar. I'm scared of the heir. I'm scared what's gonna happen after him. But
as am I. He doesn't have any heirs though. That's sort of the biggest issue. In terms
has he
of
got daughters?
No, I don't think he does. Does he?
He's got 2 daughters.
He does.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure he's got 2 daughters. Yeah.
He does.
I mean, you know, if it's an agnatic cognatic monarchy, not too bad.
You play a lot of Crusader Kings, don't you?
Yeah, I've got a lop somehow.
No, I mean, it's entirely possible. I really wouldn't be opposed to it. I am definitely in favor of Russia reestablishing its stardom. I think most Orthodox nations should reestablish their monarchies, but the issue is who is going to take them over.
The problem is with the Serbs is that we've got like the Karađorđevićes, who are currently the most recent.
Yeah.
You've got the Obrenovićes,
Yeah.
who
we have a connection to.
we have a connection to because our friend is an Obrenović. But do I feel like they're the rightful heirs to the throne? Well, that's a different opinion. I don't think he wants to hear it. But that's because I'm a Nemanjić loyalist, but they don't exist anymore. So, you know, it gets really technical. I would like us to stop dwelling on the past and just find some new kings to step up.
Exactly.
you
Yeah.
know?
I don't think that these families that have now been, out of power in some cases for
Over
80
two centuries.
Yeah. 80, 100 years, something like that. Yugoslavia was still a monarchy in like 41 or something like that before it was invaded, right?
Yeah, and it got a bit technical. No, it was a little bit earlier too. There was
Yeah.
the king lost a lot. Well, the king was an idiot. He called it Yugoslavia, but before that it was called the Kingdom of Serbs, Slovens, and Croats.
Yeah.
Like giving them equal status.
Mhm.
That's like saying the nation of New South Wales, Queensland, Victoria, Western Australia, Tasmania. Like
Yeah.
you're giving and then everyone going around saying, I'm not Australian, I'm Western Australian, I'm Tasmanian,
Mhm.
I'm New South Wales. You're gradually making a national identity within the state.
Yeah.
Like imagine going around saying I'm Texan. Oh wait, everyone does that for some reason in
No, yeah,
Texas.
that's
So I personally feel that it was a mistake to begin with, and these are the things you learn from.
Yeah. No, I can see that. But nonetheless, I think these monarchies that are just so old, they're from such a different time period. They're not cut out for this. They're not families that have been involved in the state. I think Bulgaria maybe. I think they had Tsar Simon II. I think he was the prime minister of Bulgaria at one point. But for most of these countries, they don't have like somebody who could step in from their old royal families. So it's got to be somebody new.
And I think Vlad should definitely
Vladimir.
do that.
Sorry, Vladimir.
Well, I mean, when you look at the Roman Republic transitioning to the Empire, that was Julius Caesar not doing what Augustus did. If you want a backstory for that, Caesar kept on declining the king title.
Yeah.
And his adopted son did it instead of him, and he didn't get stabbed like 30 billion times.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I mean, I think there is actually a good situation where we could, see a monarchy coming back in Russia. I don't know how many people there support it.
It would be cool to get some insight in the future.
Yeah, get some actual show prep done.
Yeah. But, this episode was purely to just, get to know us and know what we're about.
Yeah.
And, we hope that the next ones in the future, all the topics that we talked about, will go more into depth in the future.
Definitely. No, when we do a social show, like social issue show, we'll definitely go very in depth.
Yeah, we'll have different themes that will be spread out, and we won't do the same thing all the time, and we'll spread it out. And looking forward to it.
Same.
I guess we don't have to do all. I mean, we have 4 topics here.
How long have we been running for?
1 hour, 5 minutes.
1 hour, 5 minutes. Do you want to do another topic, or
We could.
we could just cut it and do another show?
Yeah.
Record another one.
All right, but we need to do a conclusion now. Well, let's
we'll
just
wrap
conclude it.
up. Sorry, you can cut this out, but should we do a prayer before and after, or no? Or is that too,
I feel like because we're not holy people,
Yeah,
that
might
we
be.
shouldn't have the same
yeah,
authority.
yeah.
Like if we have a priest on thing, I'd love for them to do it.
That'd be
Like
good,
you know what I
yeah.
mean? But I feel like we don't have the right to do that. I don't feel like people should hear us say the prayer, but that's
Yeah.
all right.
No, I agree. I just wanted to know.
Yeah, that's all good.
Just cut that out.
Yeah, we'll fix
We'll
it.
scrub.
But
Well, we
the-
actually could fit in some more time because we're gonna have to scrub the audio some.
Yeah. So I feel like we should just conclude and
Conclude now, and we'll just do another ep. We'll have a break.
yeah. Because I know Thomas is going to be here, so we could
Okay.
actually we could talk about
yeah. Okay.
Catholics leaving Orthodoxy.
All right. Yeah.
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 Sounds good.
All right. Are you ready to? Do you put markers in and stuff like that?
No, this is just like.
Okay.
So I'm
Cool.
gonna have to listen to the whole thing and find out what.
Yeah. That's all good. All
Thank
right.
you.
Let's take a break right now so he can see a little gap of sound,
Mhm.
and then we'll start again.
Okay.
So you just think about what you're going to say.
Okay.
And just start whenever you're ready.
conclude now?
You can conclude now. Yeah,
Yeah, that's what we're waiting
just say,
for.
Just say.
Oh, you're waiting for my. Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Sorry.
Yeah. Just say thanks for.
Well, I think that concludes our first episode. In the future, like we said, we're going to definitely do some social issues, current affairs. We could do some more current affairs on the next episode because we have a lot here that we didn't get to. But I think this has been, relatively good for a first shot. Yeah, well, we can loosen up more in the future.
It'll mainly be us, but we're hoping to also get some special guests and friends,
yeah.
more insight. I guess the intentions of this podcast is to make you as a listener feel like, hey, I'm not alone in this journey of orthodoxy as a young adult, and that we're people that you can somewhat relate to or learn something new, and hopefully we can learn something from you guys in the future.
Definitely.
But I feel like this is way overdue in the current social spectrum of the internet, and that we're hoping that we can help contribute to bringing more people that are new to the faith, but also people that are already in the faith to just stay positive and reassured that you're on the right path.
Definitely.
Yeah. Bella, anything you want to say?
Yeah, no, I was just going to say, like, how it's like, because sometimes when I'm bored, I'm like, I want to listen to a podcast, but I want to listen to an orthodoxy podcast. I can't find anything besides some, like, really low quality, like, Bible study podcast, and I can't understand anything they're saying.
Yeah.
So the fact that we could provide this to people our age, it's like, that's amazing. So
There was an Orthodox nationalist podcast that did exist. I think maybe it still does, but the quality was just terrible.
Yeah,
So luckily we're musicians here, and we have good.
Yeah.
Musician.
Oh, guys.
I wouldn't consider myself one.
Oh, guys,
It's
it's
okay.
all right. We're all on the. It's all right.
I mean,
We'll
I
play.
produce EDM.
But yeah, I guess if I do want to do a quick shout out for myself, I funnily enough, even though I'm an Orthodox Christian, I do play in heavy metal bands, particularly in death metal and black metal genres, and I know that cops a lot of raised eyebrows, but at the end of the day, you can still be part of this society and still get along with everyone and still be a good Orthodox Christian and send a good positive message instead of the church burning goat sacrificing ones that they had in the 90s. And
Varg.
I mean, look, he has some cool videos, but
Edgy boy.
yeah, he's all right. You leave Varg alone, he's all right. But he's just a bit monotheistically challenged. But
No, we should be bullying Varg, I think.
we should bully him into
Yeah,
orthodoxy.
let's start a beef with Varg.
I think our long-term goal of this program is to get Varg on.
No, I want to get Dugan on. I'll fly out Dugan. I'm willing.
So yeah, if you want to donate to our Patreon, $5,000 a
Yeah,
month to bring Varg and
$5,000.
Dugan in.
Everyone buy a $5 subscription to our Patreon so we can get Dugan and Varg on the show at the same time.
So
The greatest crossover episode of all time.
Top 10 anime crossovers of all time.
So I think we'll leave it there with our over-ambitious LARPing. But this is just the very beginning of Orthocast, and thank you guys for tuning in.
Thank you.
Any final words, boss?
Boss. Kill your local mail.